Now, I lived in Mexico City for many years, and I knew a lot of people that loved reading on a very deep level. And you don't have to spend a lot of time there without hearing names like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Juan Rulfo, and in this case, Mario Vargas Llosa. On my first date with the girl who would become my girlfriend, a very special girl to me in my heart still, we saw that book there and she told me that she had read it and that it was good. And from that point on, I knew that at some point I was going to read it. As you get through this book, you come up with one of the main ideas, one of the main concepts of it, which is love. What is love? Is this love? What are the various forms of love? Can something so seemingly toxic be love, especially when it seems like the love is really from one side and not reciprocated? So in English, the book is called The Bad Girl, but in Spanish, it's like Las Traversuras de la Niña Mala, which is like the mischievous things that the bad girl does, or the mischievous ways of the bad girl. Much cooler in Spanish, so from the gun in English, you already lose a bit of that flavor. Ricardo, a very mild-mannered guy, and the bad girl, as you can imagine, that it girl, she's got that something something. Ricardo becomes smitten, and even from this young age, the bad girl is not who she appears to be. Later in life, they re-find each other, first in Paris, and through several countries across the world. The bad girl always seems to be looking for some kind of man to give her the good life. I've known of women who basically have a guy in their life to serve whatever particular function that they want to accomplish. One as a mentor, one as the guy that buys him stuff, one as the guy they can have fun with. You get a bit of this vibe with her relation towards Ricardo because Ricardo adores her. So it seems like she's getting a sense of comfort from him, this adoration, even though that she is oftentimes disinterested, cold, cruel. He's very aware of how she treats him, but all the same, he loves it. He loves that she's around whenever she's off with her guys. He's jealous. So in this sense, he really isn't delusional. He's accepting what she gives him, but he's accepting it with arms wide open. This is a story that unfolds throughout some of the most classic cities in the world, and I find that there's something really cool about that. Memories are being made in various geographical locations and through different periods of time. My favorite backdrop was when they were in London. 60s, swinging London. The way in which Vargas Llosa describes the atmosphere, you can just breathe in what it must have been like being there at such a revolutionary cultural moment. What was most fun for me as a reader is that this book makes you take an active role in deciding what you would have done in a lot of these crazy situations, in a lot of situations that perhaps are not so good for us. Do you take the exit or do you try to work your way through things? So there's a lot of food for thought. I know I can think of myself in a past relationship that was destined to fail. You can recall the things you tell yourself, the blind optimism that you really want to have, that you feel, even though deep down you probably know it's going to go nowhere. As the book goes on, you do see a certain humor, care, tenderness between the two, and even from the bad girl to Ricardo. You start to really reflect upon the bad girl's perspective towards Ricardo. So she's treated him to a certain degree decent, but to what degree is it that she is always being lauded by him, is being helped financially, and to what degree is it love? To what degree is it just showing mutual respect for someone that has been caring for you? When I was around 80% done with the book, one of the main concepts that I started to reflect upon was one of the main concepts that I do think about on a regular basis in terms of my romantic life, and it has to do with how the partners that we have into our lives, affect who we become as people. I've seen many examples from people younger than me, people my age, and people all the way in their 70s now, how the people they bring into their lives affect their lives for the better, in many cases, for the far worse. In my 30s, I really do care about the personality of the girl, her ethical character. In my 20s, maybe I would have just said, oh, she's hot, that's cool. Not so long ago, I knew a girl, very sexy. She was into me, but I would notice how she was when she was around her sister, her mother. I would notice how her sister was, how her mother was, and I could imagine myself being a part of this family, and it was like a nightmare. Loud, scandalous, alcoholics. Now, when I would talk to this girl in isolation, you might have a different impression. But in this case, it really is like birds of a feather flock together. No, thank you. Ricardo has had this love obsession with this girl for decades, and if he had cut this short, he could have been a better person. His life could have been better. Everything could be different. By the time the book ends, you do know the final results of what happens between these two characters, and I can't help but to think that so much in our way of looking at how our relationships are and what they were depends on if they ended on a good note or on a bad note. If it ends on a bad note, you may think, what the hell did I do with my life? I threw it all down the drain for someone that didn't appreciate me. What was I thinking? If it ends on a good note, you may remember all of the good times and kind of put to the side all the bad things, even though that 99% of the relationship was already had and it's set in stone if you can analyze it with a clear mind. This book forces you to analyze your own romantic life, how you want it to be. It may be true that we may not all get the love that we want, the love that we think about when we think of love. And this book shows you that love is not a black and white thing. But just like life in general, it comes down to choices. And you can make good choices in regards to dating, to love, to relationships. Because you don't want to get to the end of your life. Think about what you lived. Sure, you can justify some things in your mind. But when you really think about it, and you're being honest with yourself, will you be satisfied with the love that you had?